Welcome back. Again, it's Pam. Hi, thank you. Welcome to all the new people. Thank you for all the people who are returning. I appreciate you watching these videos, listening to my stories. Tonight, I am going to discuss something that really has been my life, and that has been the adventures of raising a deaf child and a hearing child. Now, I don't know if I said this before, but I have two boys. One is deaf and one is not. So, yes, there was a difference. They are 10 years apart. Um, and my oldest is the deaf one. So, he gave me a run for my money. So, when he was born, he wasn't diagnosed until he was 18 months, but he was born deaf. Um, and that was a struggle for me. It was a fight to get him diagnosed. And I'm going to say a lot of it, in my opinion, was because I was a young mother who was fighting because I knew that there was something wrong with him because he wasn't following me and little things that was happening. But he was a great child. He was really smart. He was walking right at 8, 9 months. He just didn't talk, and he wasn't a loud child. He didn't cry a lot, and he slept through everything, which was good for a new mom, someone who had no idea what she was doing. But he was really, really good. He did little things, and once I found out he was deaf, I started having to teach him sign language, and that was a little different for me, but it was exciting because I had been around deaf people since I was 12 or 13, which was actually I felt preparation for what I was going to be facing. And I had to make a lot of decisions for a young mother. I was afraid. I made decisions, and I was a huge advocate for my child. I still am an advocate for my child. But I was also the mother who was big on, you have to learn. You have to get it. You have to know it. That was real important to me. Because even though he was deaf, it didn't mean he was stupid or he was ignorant. It did not mean that. And I was not going to feed that into him. I taught him he was smart. He could do whatever he wanted to do in this world. Anything he wanted to do, he could do it. And that was a huge thing for me. And he started at the school for the deaf when he was 3 years old, which was devastating to me as a mom. But he also, again, like I said, he was my rambunctious child that got into things and all over the place, and he wanted to do things on his own. He was very independent at a very young age, and I wasn't prepared for that. But of course, then 10 years later, I have a child who is hearing. Now, that was a tough thing for me. That is a part of the reason that my children are 10 years apart, because there was some fear there. And I needed some security in my life because I was not married when I had my first child. So I was afraid. But then came my second child, my baby, and I tell him I'm probably always going to call you my baby, and I know that is not his thing. But he was the child who heard everything. I mean, we lived in a home that had hardwood floors, and if you've ever lived in a home that had the older hardwood floors, you could walk over certain pieces and it would have that crack sound. He was my child who I would put him down to go to sleep, and I would walk over that crack and he would wake up. What is this? I wasn't used to that. I was used to a child sleeping. When I put you down, you go to sleep, and at night you go to sleep. Of course, my oldest child, again, he slept through the night. I didn't have any issues, and probably a lot of it was because he couldn't hear, so things didn't get on his nerve, things didn't wake him up and startle him. But that baby, on the other hand, he was up for everything. And actually, he was also the child who didn't really sleep. And that was a huge issue for me because I was still am the person who liked to take naps, and he didn't take naps, he didn't go to sleep. He wasn't a child who got into things. He wasn't the rambunctious. He didn't even do the terrible twos. He didn't, but the oldest one did. The baby didn't do a terrible two thing. He did what he was told. He would play by himself and he would get his little toys, and he he was good, but he didn't sleep. And I was, of course, having a deaf child, I'd already been through what the fear of my child not being able to hear. So I was afraid that if I had another child, he may not be able to hear. And that was a scary thing for me because of all the trauma from what I went through with my oldest. But when he didn't sleep at night, he didn't sleep. He was always up. He wasn't in. He just wanted you to be up. He wanted to be able to touch you. He wanted to be able to see you, and he wanted you to play with him. And it scared me so bad. I was like, I got to take him to the doctor because something's wrong with him. And of course, that was a great fear of mine. Something really is wrong with my baby. Well, I took him to the doctor. It was early on. And the doctor did all these different tests on him and checked on him. And she came back in the room from all the tests she was looking at, and she sat down and she sat in front of me. And she said, I know this is not going to make you real happy, but he's just a child who doesn't require a lot of sleep. Now I'm a new mom again, because 10 years to me is a new mom again. I just broke down and started crying. Because what am I going to do? I think this child's going to give me a heart attack because I never sleep. Well, we get through all of that because, of course, my mom used to say to me, it's not going to last forever. And I used to wonder what she was thinking. What do you mean? I'm not concerned right now about forever. I'm concerned now about right now because I am not sleeping. This is a child that probably sleeps about 2-3 hours a night. That's not normal. But I got through it. Now, it was difficult because he was a child that I was real protective of my children, and I didn't want him to spend the night at anybody's house because I knew he didn't sleep. Then they started to grow up, and because the other thing was my concern of, I got to explain to him why his brother is leaving to go away to school because the school was an hour and a half away, and his brother was actively going he was only seeing him once a month by then because he was 10 and he was excited about being at the school. He had all his friends and he was participating in sports, and they had so many things for the kids to do, and he wasn't excited about coming home. And at that point it was, I'm excited about this. I love it. This is where I want to be. So the younger brother used to be upset. Where is he going? And when is he coming back? And that was an issue because I had to explain it, but it worked because after a period of time, they got used to it. But they spent time together. They spent the summers together. And when they were together, they are very protective of one another. I used to hear them argue, and I would always try to go in and intervene. And then one day I thought, you can't do that. Kids do that. Because I'm thinking I got to make sure that the little one is understanding the big one, and the big one is making sure he is making sure he's explaining things to the little one. Well, what I found was they found a way to communicate, and it wasn't through sign language. They were having complete arguments, and I went in one day and I could hear my son had some voice, and he was yelling to his brother, get out of my room. His little brother was saying, I'm not leaving. And it was really, wow, this is really something. And when they would argue about his name because my oldest couldn't say his name properly because he really didn't know it or say it enough. As he got older, he was able to say it properly without a problem, but at that time he couldn't. And he would say his name incorrectly, and the youngest one would turn around and say, "That's not my name," and say what his name is. And it was, as a mom, I realized I couldn't intervene because these are little sibling fights and it's going to happen. I want them to always get along, but they won't. And I started to do things with the kids. So I started allowing my oldest, because at some point when we went out, I had to teach him that he had to do things on his own, which was difficult for me. But we would go to McDonald's or a restaurant. I would make him order his own food. And you have to find a way to explain what you want. And he did. He never shied away from doing it. And a lot of that the younger brother was looking at. And of course, the younger brother annoyed him. He annoyed him a lot, to the point of doing things that would agitate him. My oldest would say, if I would leave them in the car and go into Walmart, they were older. Probably at this time, we were talking about 14, 15, at the age where the little kids ask a lot of questions. He would always say, "What is this? And what is this? Well, what is this? And what is this?" But he was a kid. And his older brother he was explaining it and explaining it. He realized he keep asking me, "What is this? And why is this? And why is that?" And he said, "Why do you ask so many questions?" And they understood it amongst each other. And there was the day of, he asked me, "Why does he keep asking, why this and why this and why this and what is that and what is that?" And I said, "Because he's a baby. He's a kid. He wants to know." And he was like, "You'll never get mad because he's a baby. You ask." I said, "It won't last long. It won't last long. He'll get an understanding. It'll be fine." And he said, "Yeah, but he keeps wanting to know, what is this?" It won't last long. And it didn't. And he just said to me, "You were right." But it was just going through those things and dealing with a child who can run around the house and talk to you and ask a lot of questions. And then having the child who doesn't run around and talk to you and ask a lot of questions. He's either pointing or he's trying very hard to explain to you what it is he wants, which sometimes annoys him because he can't express what he wants and he's growing into himself. But he grew into himself. And it was exciting because I was afraid to have another child because of what I had gone through, and watching him and seeing Brendan, my baby, do things, and watching him do things, and then seeing them do things together, and seeing that they were very protective of one another. There was a day that even though my oldest was older, I think the youngest was 2 at the time, we were in a shopping center and we were shopping, and the baby was running around in the clothes and he was hiding, and he was all just playing around. And his older brother, because he couldn't hear, and he couldn't hear his brother laughing because that's what they were doing, he would hide and the other would go find him, and he wasn't finding him really though, he was just getting him and saying, "Come." And the baby kept doing it, and his brother got really upset, and he was like, "Hey, you can't do that because I can't hear. If something happens to you, I can't hear." And the most amazing thing was that the baby understood exactly what he was saying. And he came out and he held his brother's hand. And that's how they walked around. And it was, wow, this is how this happened. And these were all learning experiences for me, and how they dealt with one another, and how my fear of how are they going to do this, and what if he can't communicate with him? What if the one who can hear can't communicate with the one who can't? I had all of this going on in my head, and really, I shouldn't have. I should have done what I did, and I prayed about it, and I asked God to just guide me where I need to go. And he just ordered my steps right into what I needed. And I have they're the best brothers. I don't know how they communicate still, but they do, even good and bad, they communicate. And I've asked, do you talk to your brother? Yes, I talked to him. I talked to him a couple of weeks ago. I checked on him. So it's been great. But these are the things that I dealt with as a mom, dealing with a child who couldn't hear and a child who could. And being fearful of the fact that I wasn't going to be good at it because I didn't know how to do it. But surely came right up and it worked. And it's easy. It's very easy. All we have to do is teach our children. We teach them, and they know that it was okay, and being home was a safe place, and being out together was safe. It was okay. However you have to communicate, I don't care if you have to write it down on a sheet of paper, text it to one another, get your point across. And that goes for anybody. If we are together, we make sure we say what needs to be said, however that is. So it has been great for me to raise these two boys, hearing, deaf, all of it. It's been great. I've held you guys long enough. So like, comment, share, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you. This is an adventure for me to share my life and share these stories. So come join me. Let's enjoy. Y'all have a good evening.